Telling you, Rich, can't wait for today's episode.
Which one is this?
Grossest movies.
Oh my God, there are so many gross movies. I love them.
Like, what's your favorite?
Boy, that's a tough call. I think maybe Day of the Dead. What about you?
Fried green tomatoes.
Okay, then. I'll tell you one thing, amigo. This episode takes a lot of guts.
Bebe, he's doing it again.
I know, I'm on it.
Rich has been kicked from the chat.
A lot of guts indeed. Hello and welcome to MonsterKid Fury. I'm Callie, and here with me is Rick from Film Fury. Hi, baby.
Here we are again.
Also, Rich from Monster Kid Central. Hi, Rich.
Howdy.
And today we'll be discussing goriest movie moments. Take it away.
Oh, good.
Ricky.
So how do you feel about gore in movies, Rich? I don't think we've ever talked about that.
Actually, if it's done right, it's the greatest thing in the world, and if it's done poorly, it sucks. It's the one thing where you can see who's got the budget and who's got the talented effects people. So it's just one of those where we've both seen some pretty bad gore effects, and we've both seen some that are just beautiful. And I know I'm saying beautiful, but I do mean it that way.
Yeah. See, it was funny because obviously my formative years of horror film watching were in my preteen and teen period. And for a small little window, I thought I wanted to do special effects, and I realized I didn't want to. But I was always jazzed by gore effects, even over story for a little bit. And I
Yep.
think it was just a product of the time. You had special effects, innovators, across the board in slasher movies, Tom Savini, things of that like. And every once in a while, there'll be an effect that still really impresses me in a movie. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, wow. And it's not CGI. So
Right.
it's kind of exciting to talk about this and hopefully bring some choices like we try to do that wouldn't be the ones you would immediately think of.
I agree completely.
Well, I'm going to go with the granddaddy for me of them all, Reanimator by the masterful Stuart Gordon. It was one of the first times that just the gore effects and the story all seemed to make sense. Like, to not have this be a gory film wouldn't make it a good film in any way, shape, or form at that point. The Dr. Hill walking around without the head, so comical and at the same time so terrifying at certain points. When the dead come back to life and just the way they rip things apart, it just got me. And it's definitely, I think, probably Gordon's most masterful film next to From Beyond. So
Yes.
that's my first choice under some of our goriest likes.
Well, if gore is supposed to make you feel uncomfortable in some way, um, then the most uncomfortable I felt at the movie was Barbara being having head by
When
a
a
head.
head is trying to give head, yes, I know what you're talking about.
That was uncomfortable as hell because I was like, God, first of all, she's stunning. Even today, she's stunning, but back then she was stunning, and it's just to see that freaking lunatic. It it was rough. It was rough to get through, but yeah, Reanimator is just a favorite of mine. Even I mean, no matter what, on any level, it's just a brilliant fucking film. But yeah, the gore effects in it were wonderful. Um,
and, every time I watch the movie, I forget how elaborate that ending is. That
oh yeah,
finale when when Herbert's got the two syringes and he's like overdose. and you have tentacles coming out of body cavities. It really is an impressive sequence for such a low budget film.
I know, and I mean, and practical. You know, the whole thing. It must have been a nightmare. It really must have been.
Which one did I see? Was it From Beyond or was it Reanimator?
You saw From Beyond. You're talking about with Ken Foree in it, right?
Yes. Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's
that's the
From
one that I
Beyond,
saw.
which has a good amount of gore as well, but it's not as bloody. It's more metaphysical, alien like
Yeah.
effects in that movie. So
But it's interesting because I would say that if most men show their dates, wives, girlfriends, whatever, one of those two movies, it's going to be From Beyond because it's all about experimental sex
mhm.
instead of a head giving head, which I'm going to guess isn't extremely popular with the ladies. So, I mean, I could just imagine that's not a really great sign or sight, I'm sorry, for them to see. So,
A severed
uh
gross head. Nah.
yeah, yeah.
Nah.
So that's interesting that that's the one you showed her, but it's also not a surprise to me.
Well, because again, the gore factor, I kind of knew for Reanimator, she would be like, plus there's the cat sequence, so I don't think
Yeah,
she'd be able to handle the cat,
yeah.
even though it's hilarious the way they do it.
Yeah,
That fake cat on the back of him is hilarious.
yeah, I have to say that of all the really good effects, the cat is not one of them, and that worked for me because I would much rather have the animal stuff look fake because this way I don't have to relive the drowning horse again, you know.
I never got to meet Stuart Gordon, but if I had, I think I would have been able to tell him, Mr. Gordon, you were very integral in my puberty stage. You were very welcome because I had Barbara in Reanimator, and then you're like, wow, she's really cute. This is women. And then you get to From Beyond, and it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah,
you know, and it's not even her being naked at that point, which is really fascinating, actually.
right. Well, she happens to be somebody who looks equally beautiful whether she's dressed or not.
Exactly. But this is going to turn into a Barbara Crampton podcast otherwise. So, what is your first choice?
My first choice is what I would call the granddaddy, Day of the Dead.
See, I considered that one, and that the movies I picked, I'm like, do I want to go back to the well, or do I want to throw in some ones that people may not think about? But that is an excellent choice, El Capitan.
Uh, it's something that if you were fortunate enough to see the progression of the Living Dead in the theater, um, you had that reaction with each movie, um, because I mean, Night of the Living Dead, there had never been anything like that, as tame as it is now. Uh, a guy chomping down on a liver was not something you saw very often. And yes, I will state that H.G. Lewis did gore effects, but they were always cartoony to me, at least. They were ultra cartoony. Where and that's not a dig on him. That was just his style. Um, but Night of the Living Dead, they were, although the intestines weren't human, they were the real thing. I mean, they kind of just went to the store and got smelly guts and said to everybody, all right, so just eat them. So and everybody, thank God, played along. And then Dawn of the Dead took it a huge leap forward. um, and I thought that was going to be the pinnacle. And then all of a sudden, Day of the Dead has some stuff in it that is just, to this day, it's shocking. I mean, when an autopsy zombie tries to get off the table and spills his stomach contents, onto the ground, yet you can still see the rib cage and then the emptiness, below the rib cage. It's pretty stunning. Savini and his crew, which were possibly the most talented crew he ever had, just went crazy with that one, and it's just stunning. It's just beautiful.
Well, the first shot of the movie, or the first shot rather for the opening credits, when you see the tongue zombie, right there, okay, this is beyond what we've seen in
Yeah,
Dawn of the Dead. And even to know we have the sprinkles of a regular looking almost Dawn of the Dead zombie with the almost pancake kind of makeup going on, then they will outdo themselves with, like you said, the sequence with the entrails falling out of the body, which we see twice, with the nightmare with
yep,
Miguel. Just every single effect kind of outdid the other, and by the time you get to the finale, you're just amazed at what you're seeing.
right. Yeah, Romero often used to talk about the fact that um, he'd say something along the yeah, gee, I don't know. Do you think we could have something along the lines of this? And Savini would go, "Yep, we can do it." I mean, there was like no thinking about it. Yep, we'll make it happen.
He seemed to thrive on that. Every movie he
Oh yeah.
did, if he was asked to do something, he would try to come up with it on the spot, or he would pull it off, if not come up with something even better.
Oh sure, absolutely. And but I think not that I'm comparing myself, but I think a lot of creative people are like that. It's the second you tell me I can't do something, I want to try and figure out a way to do it. Um, so I mean, I haven't done a lot of directing, but the pretty much the only thing I ever directed, I did it because I had a vision for this shot, um, and everybody basically said, I don't think you can pull that off, and we did. So, but anyway, no, I consider that a challenge when somebody says you can't do it. You know,
Yeah.
keeping in mind sometimes they're right, but whatever.
But at least if you make the effort and attempt to get to that point, I think that's an honorable part of the creative trade. At
Yeah,
least
I
attempt to do it.
I agree. But Day of the Dead is just, I mean, really is stunning as far as, and then you add to it Romero dialogue, great acting, uh, you name it. I don't think there's a lot of misfires in that movie. But if you want, in fact, I have a story for you. Um, I had a friend who owned a video store back in the '80s, and um, he was there all alone. So, when I came in to visit, which I did pretty much every day anyway, um, he'd say, "Hey, could you do me a favor? I want to use the facility, so I'll be back in 5 minutes. Could you just stand behind?" And I tell him the same thing every day. I don't know how to run a register, so I'll look like the person behind the desk. I'm not going to be able to actually do it. So, let's not take a lot of time. So on cue, a woman walks in, and I'll admit it, I'm kind of checking her out because she's an attractive lady. And she comes over to me and she says, "What's the goriest movie that you have?" And I thought about it for a half a second. And I said, "Day of the Dead." And she said, "Could you show me where that is?" And I said, "Sure." So I brought her over, I hand it, and she starts reading the back of it. And she sees that it's unrated. And she said, "Well, I'm having a birthday party for a 15-year-old and my son, and and I want to have a really bloody, gory movie." And I said, "Well, I'm pretty sure that's the one." I said, "You're going to have to be the one to make the decision though whether you pull the trigger on it, but I think you've got a pretty good choice there." She says, "The only thing is there any nudity in it?" I think about it, and I said, "No." She says, "Okay." And she walks up. She says, "All right, I'll take it." And at that time, Andy walks back out and he does the transaction. And when she leaves, I said to Andy, you know, that still stuns me that somebody doesn't want their kids to see boobs, but doesn't mind if they see an autopsy. I said, that's remarkable to me. I said, because in all probability in real life, they're going to see boobs at some point, but they're never going to see an autopsy. And anyway, it just floored me that was it. There was no thinking about it. As long as it doesn't have nudity, this is the movie for my 15-year-old. And again, that's not my decision. I don't care about that decision that she
Right.
made it, but really, you know, autopsy zombie over boobs, really?
See,
So,
the funny thing is, though, my mom was the same way, though. She was, God bless her. If we were in a Friday the 13th movie, guarantee there was going to be a moment of her going
oh, really? Okay.
like that. So, but it's okay because late night cable came to my rescue. That
Thank
and her
God.
inability to stay up past midnight. So it's like,
Yeah.
thank you, Cinemax.
Yeah.
Cinemax. Yeah, that's it. Cinemax.
Yeah. See, I had no problem with that. My mother was, my mother didn't care about gore, didn't care about nudity. So, in fact, my brother, when he was like 13, walked downstairs one day and said, "You know what I want? I want centerfolds in my bedroom." And my parents went, "Okay." And like 2 weeks later, they're gone, and he's got wrestling pictures up and stuff like that. They
Oh,
knew that if
wow.
they didn't make a deal out of it, you know, it would last probably about 2 weeks, and that'd be it. So yeah, they didn't. None of that stuff
He's
phased
like,
them.
I'm tired of Miss January. She's coming down.
Yeah,
Time
which
from Roddy Piper.
the opposite of me, who, you know, never got tired of Miss January. But anyhow, all right. So, Callie, do you have a contribution?
I do. I actually came up with one while we were talking, or while you guys were talking. So, on the topic of zombie, my choice is hashtag alive.
Good choice.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay, that's a great choice.
And we saw this movie because I think our youngest decided that she wanted to watch it, right?
Yeah, because
She's
she's into
into
Korean everything, anime. She's very open to watching all that stuff.
all of the Asian zombies. They are very scary and fast. So
Yeah.
she put it on, and I decided that I wasn't going to watch this because I'm just not into horror. But after she and Ricky watched this, they were both raving about how awesome it is, how cool it is, and she likes to watch things multiple times. So
Right.
one of the times that she had it on TV, I went ahead and snuck into the room and watched a portion of it, and I was like, "Oh, okay, this is actually not as terrible." Oh God, there, then the gore happened, and I felt that if the characters can keep me anchored there long enough, I can look away. I can close my eyes. There's plenty of things
Right.
I can do to help alleviate the gore because it is incredibly gory. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I I really did come to like that movie a lot, and it has desensitized me. So, I can watch it now from
That's
beginning to end.
actually great. That's
Yes.
a big step.
It is an incredibly big step.
Wow.
Yeah, and for everyone watching and listening, if you haven't seen hashtag alive, don't believe the bullshit you see on Facebook about it being just pedestrian entertainment. No, it's a really well made movie.
I think so
Is it
too.
Train to Busan? No, but it has likable characters, very tense situations, uh, killer score. It is. It's really an
Yeah.
enjoyable flick.
Yeah, it is.
And
Absolutely.
really decent gore. So, definitely
Oh
check
yeah,
that out.
it's a rough movie.
Yeah. But that it shocked me when I saw it, and I thought, you know, this is my kind of jam. So I was
Right?
very happy about it.
Yeah, every once in a while you can still come across a really good zombie movie. It does happen.
That's what we want. I live for it.
Alrighty. Well, my next one is going to have some pushback from some people out there, I'm sure.
And it's
But
going to
I
be
will
me.
argue that it's still a horror movie. It was released by Scream Factory, so I'm going to say it's still a horror movie. And it's Backcountry. Now, yes, this does not start like a horror film. It really is about a couple on the decline. Things are not working out the way they want it to on either part. And they're kind of there. You get the idea with this last ditch effort, in a therapeutic weekend together, hoping that, they will rekindle something. And at one point, it almost feels like it's going to turn into a slasher movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the last half hour, they encounter a grizzly that hunts and attacks them. And the sequence, I'm not going to go into, how it happens in the story, but there is a sequence in this which literally I had to pause the movie for a second because it is so realistic and it is so gory and horrifying that I literally had to go, wow, because this to me is something that could happen to you.
Right.
It has happened. You look at the Werner Herzog Grizzly Man film about that particular gentleman who thought, well, I can be friends with the grizzly bear, and you saw what happened to him and his girlfriend. And I think maybe the filmmakers were thinking about that when they made this.
Yeah.
And you only heard what happened to them in the Herzog documentary. And it's almost like they were like, well, we're going to show you essentially what it would look like. And it is. It's a really gory, horrifying sequence that and it's a tight running time. It's like 80 minutes. So you get in, you get out, and it's got really good performances. And it's definitely, I think, when you watch it, I know I carried it with me for a few days. Like I kept thinking about it because it was so well done, and again, just so horrific. So, Backcountry is a gory recommendation on my part.
Well, I'll agree that they probably were thinking a little bit about their Herzog picture. They certainly weren't thinking about the movie Grizzly from the
No,
70s,
not at all.
but
or
which
Grizzly 2 by any means. No.
I never saw Grizzly 2, and I
I
feel
oof.
somehow cheated.
No, don't. I made the mistake of buying that on Amazon because it was something insane. It was like $10. And I'm like, oh, $10, and it's got Charlie Sheen. It's got all these actors in it. Oh, it's dreadful. It didn't even come as a pressed Blu-ray. It was a BDR.
Yeah,
So at that point, you're kind of in trouble. You're like, wait a minute.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Skip that one.
Well, the first one's no walk in the park, as far as and the funny thing is, it's got all of these great acting staples in it. I mean, these actor, who have probably each did 2 dozen horror movies, and you kind of like them in everything that they do. But boy,
Mhm.
this was rough. But anyway, that's not the movie we're talking about. We're talking about In Country, and
Backcountry.
I'm sorry, Backcountry, and that's a rough picture. Um, it's 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 seldom that I root for the humans in in these kind of movies, but holy crap, yeah, it was tough. It was tough to get through.
Yeah, but because you identify with the characters so much and you like the characters so much, even to know they're a couple that are at odds. They basically did what Paul Verhoeven did with RoboCop. He knew, how am I going to get anyone to care about this character we only see for a few minutes? So he tries to create the most violent death possible. Well, here you immediately get sucked into this couple's relationship. You see what they're going through. You start getting antsy when you think it's going to turn into a slasher movie. And then yeah, by the time the bear sequences begin, you are so invested in them that yeah, it's just rough to watch them go through that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I am. I'm going to go back to uh, two movies that are my favorites, and I can't separate them, and I hope you'll see why. But it's Bad Taste and Dead Alive.
Very good choices.
I cannot separate them. I would watch them on a double feature anytime. I absolutely love them. Dead Alive being brain dead. But anyway, I am madly in love with both of them. And although I will say that the gore is cartoony, it's not. I don't mean it that way. It's comedic.
Mhm.
Cartoony. H.G. Lewis's cartoony was the bright red and things like that, literally cartoon-ish. Where these are just like the Groove Tube, all of those movies.
Yeah.
It's just that kind of just nuts, and so it's the kind of thing that you laugh your way through, but I'm saying this as somebody who enjoys gore. I don't know how somebody who doesn't like gore would react. I'm not sure that they'd sit there laughing at it. I'm not, I don't have a clue. I can't speak to that.
Dead Alive, they may make it through, but Bad Taste, they're not. Like, if I showed that to Callie, she would not get through that. It is such a disgusting movie. It's Peter Jackson became my hero during that time
Me
because
too.
when I read Gore Zone and I read the interview and I'm just like, wow, they made this movie in New Zealand. New Zealand actually gave them money to make this movie, which was it's awesome. And it is so disgusting. It is so nasty. People, vomiting, drinking vomit. It's just there's so
Oh,
many. It was like he just went down a checklist and said, "All right, Mike, what things can we do to disgust them? This is what we're gonna do." And
okay.
Right.
So you're
and they
talking
are.
actual disgusting stuff. When we said gore, of course I'm thinking on the lines of like blood, but you're talking
Well,
this
this
type
is
of bodily
everything. You
fluid.
get you get so
No,
many things.
it's yeah.
Oh,
This is the whole spectrum.
If
okay.
there's anything you can think of that's disgusting and gory,
It's probably
Jackson
in
and his
there.
people do
Okay.
it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I
Yeah,
could watch that. No, thank
see,
you.
Dead Alive, you could probably handle because it is more of a zombie, Evil Dead sort of movie. That I think you would be, except the wounds. The wounds are pretty nasty in that movie.
right.
Yeah. If
Did
you've
you
ever
show me
popped your
that one?
worst pimple, if you have ever popped your worst pimple, imagine that in a cinematic range, and that's kind of what you get in Dead Alive.
So is it Dead
It-
Alive and Brain Dead? Is that the same movie?
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the one with
And
the emer?
no, that's brain
No,
damage.
that's brain
Brain
damage.
damage.
Different
Okay.
movie.
Different movie.
That's Frank
And don't get me
Henenlotter.
wrong, I'm glad Peter Jackson went on to bigger things. The Frighteners is one of my favorite movies. Lord of the Rings is epic as shit.
Yep.
I'm probably the only person who likes the 3.5 hour version of King Kong. But man, I miss him during his horror period. I miss his Meet the Feebles phase. Uh, that's another gory, disgusting movie, Meet the Feebles. To picture him sitting around saying, "I think we need to do a perverted version of the Muppet Show, and we're
Yeah.
gonna have a character that's having Vietnam flashbacks, and we're gonna another gross, disgusting movie." But I miss that period of him making films like that, and I keep hoping one day he's gonna be like, you know what? I'm tired of doing Beatles documentaries, and I'm just gonna do this disgusting movie that people go, "Why, Peter? Why?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "To remind you that I can do it. That's why."
Well, see, and keep in mind, as a Beatles fan, I list his more recent things as part of his accomplishments. So
Mhm.
so I'm thrilled to death they were in the right hands. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I certainly miss his experimental period because nobody did it like him.
See, and I keep thinking there's got to be one in there. It's got to be that Rocky fire in the belly thing. I keep thinking at some point he's been sitting around with his wife and collaborator going, I'd really like to do another. No, don't, Peter. fine. And then he just goes about what he was doing, you know?
Nah, I think he's got more guts than that. I think if he gets the fire in the belly that he wants to make one, he'd make one. And the good part is he can finance it again, so he
Oh,
doesn't
exactly.
actually have to deal with New Zealand. Um, but I know that a fair amount of his own cash went into the first one, and because it didn't have to be that much. Um, but I think he's the guy. Um, I think he and Guillermo are the two guys who would have the balls to do basically whatever they wanted to, whether it was deemed good for their career or not.
Yeah. See, and I would love to see the filmmakers do that, get together in a group and say we're going to do an anthology
Oh my
movie where
gosh.
each segment calls back to what we did before. Have Peter do his shtick, have Guillermo do his, and bring in whoever else you want who's like, you know what? I want to go back to what I did when I was in my 20s and 30s. I want to do that because in that format you could write it off as kind of a gimmick without losing face in the industry, I think. Even Sam Raimi, I think, would be able to do that.
I have the perfect third person, Cronenberg.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Right? I mean,
Because I keep thinking he's got something in there he wants to get out
yeah,
that's in a more visceral level.
his stuff has never wavered in the sense that he's still willing to look at the world the way he wants to look at the world,
Right.
but his stuff has become more polished, and I don't mean that in a negative sense. So I think he'd be the perfect third person to go back to those kind of rough looking, unpolished days. Um, I think that'd be great. So
Yeah.
so
To
let's
see him
let's
go back to something like Shivers, yeah, that
yeah.
would be wild.
So let's get on it and contact these people and get the ball rolling here.
You hear that, moderator up there? You need to contact Cronenberg like immediately. Get
Well,
Guillermo on the phone, you
yeah, I
know.
think we got to get Guillermo and Peter first, and then I think Cronenberg will hop
Cronenberg
on.
will fall into line. He'll
Yeah,
be
I
like,
think so.
hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's going to say, yeah, I don't want to be without this one. I want to be a part of this.
Where
So
is he at now in age? How old is he? Late 70s or
yeah, well, I go by two things. You two are younger than I am. He's older than I am. That's the only. I don't pay attention to age. I just know who's older than me and who's younger than me. That's it.
it's the only gauge you need, huh?
Yeah. Well, that I won't cry over. So yeah.
Stop.
Anyhow, um, where were we? Oh yeah. I'm sorry.
So
Boy,
you
did we did we zig?
No,
wait, you mean we
Anyhow,
verged? We never
yeah.
verge. I don't know what you're talking about. We stay on topic all the time. We never verge.
this was
Yeah.
part of the topic because we're talking goriest movies. So those
Exactly.
guys count in this discussion.
Boy, no kidding.
So my next one is going to be The Descent. Seeing that on screen, it's incredibly terrifying for me. It's bad enough that I am slightly claustrophobic, but seeing those people in that kind of peril, coupled with some scary ass monster things that are gross as hell, it's no bueno for me.
All right,
Definitely
I'll go
gross.
with you on that.
Yeah.
Gross.
Absolutely.
For
Why?
someone who doesn't like gore, I can understand why they would, yeah, add
Very
that to their list.
uncomfortable. It made me squeamish. Everything about that damn movie was very uncomfortable for me. So
They're very wet.
yeah,
I mean, you would just imagine touching their flesh. It
so
would be.
slick and gross and wet. Yes,
Mhm.
kind of like
So
Tarman Zombie. That's nope, don't like it.
so we're getting into the category of, I'm going to use the word moist.
You've been waiting to use the word moist ever since we started this
Look at that
podcast, probably.
Oh,
triumphant.
before then. Anyway, but yeah, yeah, I completely get it. I wouldn't see that's the wonderful thing about having three opinions here, because I wouldn't have considered that necessarily a gore movie, but the second you said what your objections are to it, I get it. I completely understand.
Because
So it's
you had the characters in there when they would get injuries, for instance. That's, in my opinion, that's gore effects. And
right.
when the monsters swarm them and start attacking them, that's gore effects because it's
Right.
gross and has to do with bodily stuff. So nope, nope. I cannot make it through that movie without looking away. I am not
Okay.
desensitized to that one. It still gets me.
Which I did not have the pleasure to see that in the theater, so I actually convinced her to watch it with me on home video.
Yep.
And the moment you see that creature the first time, where it does that great rack shot to it behind her,
Yep.
she was done. She stood up, left the room. She's like, "I'm done. I'm done."
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was on multiple viewings. I had to get through it in chunks because I couldn't sit down and through the entirety of it and watch.
Right.
And that's what depresses me so much about Neil Marshall's career. Not that I feel that his talent is lacking in any way, shape, or form. I think he just needs to hit on that script again, that one that gives him the ability to be such a masterful storyteller, because that shot is one of the greatest scare moments over the last 20-25 years.
I'll go with you on that. Absolutely. Um, I really enjoyed that movie. Um, uh, like I said, it didn't have the same effect on me, but absolutely thoroughly enjoyed that movie. And the funny thing is, when I saw it, I wasn't claustrophobic either. Uh, Certain things in my life have led me to believe now that I am more claustrophobic than I ever was. And so I'm not sure it would have the same effect on me. I think it might be a stronger movie now on me, because again, I didn't understand claustrophobia. I didn't understand fear of heights. The only thing I was ever afraid of was snakes. I didn't like snakes. So but I have since, in fact, Rick, this is something that we've both been through since the open heart.
Mhm.
I find that I am claustrophobic, and I found that out when I was being tested for I think it was, is it an MRI that puts you in the tube?
Yeah,
Okay.
isn't that a wonderful experience to go into a rumbling tunnel for
Well,
about a minute and a half to 3 minutes?
but I had been in them before and it didn't bother me. And now I have
Mhm.
to go in and shut my eyes before I go in and keep them shut until I come out, and then I'm fine. But I during that time I was given one, and I can't remember at what stage it was, because it's all a wonderful blur. But uh I I had to tell them, stop. I need to get out. And that had never happened before, ever. So anyway, but that's when it happened to me. So I do want to revisit the movie, and at the same time I don't want to revisit the movie, because I don't know how powerful it's going to be now. But it was a
Mhm.
solid, damn solid movie when I saw it, and thoroughly enjoyed it. So I think it's a
So you
great
hear
pick.
that, Neil Marshall? You scared the man so badly he doesn't want to revisit the film because he's afraid he'll get scared even worse.
Yes, I'll
That's how
cop to
good of a
that.
director you are.
I'll cop to that. Absolutely.
Alrighty. So what I noticed when I was picking my choices here is I find it very interesting how often gore and sex come together in terms of the time that I was watching them.
Okay.
So that's definitely the case with Class of Nukem High, which any teenager during the 80s, early 80s, and with horror films, obviously you're going to come across Troma at some point in time. Even
Oh
in the
yeah.
early 90s, you would come across them. And Class of Nukem High is very much like Toxic Avenger in the sense that it's just this disgusting, gory horror film, and yeah, sprinkled with breasts throughout the entire thing. And the actress in this one never turned up in anything else, which is such a shame because she was a really beautiful girl and she wasn't a horrible actress, on Troma level.
Right.
Anyways, um, but it's got just some of the most ridiculous, gross, giant penises growing through blankets, just insane stuff. And Troma was able to create its own niche. Like, this is our version of gore. It's not the gore you're going to get in Friday the 13th. It's not what you're going to see in Herschel Gordon Lewis. It's not even Henenlotter gore. It's very hard to explain, but they really kind of created their own patented version of gore and just disgusting the audience as much as they could. And they always seem to pull it off extremely well.
I completely agree. You also get that in movies like Street Trash. Um,
Yes.
it's just that overall smarmy kind of feel to it that you never trust the movie ever. There isn't one frame in Class of Nukem High that I truly believe won't lead to something I really don't want to see.
They're not going to show an aborted fetus sort of thing, are they? Oh
Yeah,
no, I guess they are going to do that type. I wonder if it was regional. I wonder if that had a lot to do with it because Street Trash was that New York or was that Jersey?
I think well, it doesn't matter.
But I mean,
It,
close enough. Yeah,
right,
either
it
way.
doesn't matter. But when you get Henenlotter, when you get Troma, when you get uh, oh, I forget who directed Street Trash. That horrible. Anyway, when you get that group, um, to me at least, it's very regional.
Just like Deadbeat at Dawn, same
Yep,
thing. Combat Shock, which
yep,
almost made my choices actually. It was different from the gore of say Los Angeles based, California based horror films,
right.
and I find that very interesting.
No, I agree.
Because it makes me wonder, does it have a lot to do with the time period of both of those states? Just in terms of urban decay and things like that? Did that kind of have something to do with it? I wonder about that.
Oh, in my opinion, Henenlotter could not make the movies that he made back then in today's New York or New Jersey because everybody would say, "Well, that shit doesn't exist."
Right.
You know,
So even at the time, if he made it in Florida, people would be like, I don't buy any of that,
right?
anything you're showing me.
Yeah. So it was. It's just it was a wonderful time for movies, but yeah, all of them are just like they just leave a really bad taste in your mouth.
If if you could taste 16 millimeter film, that's kind of the you're just like, yeah, I got some trauma in my mouth. I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's what that was. That or a bug, one of the two.
Which coincidentally is the title of my memoirs. I've got some trauma in my mouth. Um, anyway, that's a wonderful pick. Um, mine are my next one. No, you know what? I'm going to save those to last. My next one is Audition.
Good choice.
Uh, it was made by a guy named Takashu Miike, and
Also known as I make a shit ton of fucking movies.
yeah, and if you're looking for that last name, it's Mike with two I's instead of one. It's Miike. Uh, Certainly worth a look, and it's a simple story about a widower who decides he wants to start dating again, and hell breaks loose, and I mean all hell breaks loose. It's something that it's something that is indescribable, at least to me. But God Almighty, it's pretty rough, in my opinion.
You know, what's funny is the reason I've watched this movie is from a particular filmmaker I enjoy, Rob Zombie, actually, because
Uh-huh.
I was watching the Bravo, 100 Greatest Scare Moments, and he talks so much about that film, and they would show you little clips. And I'm like, I've got to see this movie. And yeah, I had no idea what I was in store for because,
And the good part is you can't know going in. I mean,
oh, exactly.
It doesn't lend itself to giving any hints away.
This is the type of movie that if an American studio tried to remake it, and you bastards better never even think about it, they would just make it disturbing or attempt to be disturbing from the beginning, to
Yep.
where once the moments happen, they would mean nothing. And that's what this movie does so well, is it sucks you in with the characters.
Yep.
And you're right, when hell breaks loose, it does, to where you're flinching and you're just like, oof, oof, and it's definitely a wonderful choice.
All right, Callie.
This is my last one. I chose You Might Be the Killer.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. For your level of gore, yeah, it's definitely gory.
My level of gore. So I was rewatching a lot of the ones that I had seen because I'm going to write a review about it for the site. After getting not even like 15 minutes in, I was like, holy shit, this is a lot of gore. It's not entry level. And for some reason, I don't recall it being so gory. The second time around watching it, why did I forget about all this extra stuff that was in here that was really, really gory? So yeah, I love it. It's a great movie. And for me, it works having the comedic stuff in there as well as the scary portions of it. But yeah,
I think that's why you were able to deal with it, because in many respects, though it is gory, it's almost kind of taking a jab at Tom Savini and his type of effects from that period. I
because it
think.
is over the top. Like it is incredibly. I wouldn't call it cheesy, but it does borderline that. It does feel real though. Like some of the portions of it were like, oh, okay, that just happened. But
Right.
it's okay because again, there's something funny happening now. So it was all right, but not one for entry level people. So if you're not into that kind of stuff, don't watch this.
Well, I wouldn't know what you were talking about if it weren't for a show that we did a couple of weeks back.
Yep.
Um, and now I've had a chance to see it, and I completely agree with you watching it through your eyes that I can see how that would be rough.
And I really enjoyed the soundtrack to it because I didn't see this movie first. I heard the song You Might Be the Killer on, I think it was Ricky's.
Yeah, because the moment I heard the song from another podcast, because they gave it the award of, hey, you're gonna have a title song that's your title of your movie, kind of thing. And yeah, I fell in love with the song, so I was playing it all the time, and that's when she heard it.
And I was
Ah,
thinking it was the cheesiest freaking song ever. And hearing it with the movie, now it makes sense. Okay, I
right.
can get on board with this. But when I first heard it, now it's incredibly catchy.
Yeah.
See, I don't think I can get the same results though with playing like Lethal Weapon from Lethal Weapon. I don't think she'll still be like, it's still a cheesy song. I don't care if it's in the movie or not.
Well, you could do Lethal Weapon 2 because the end credits have a George Harrison song,
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true.
which
I'll give you
happens
that.
to be pretty decent.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, Mr. Beatles, man.
you
So,
know,
all right, well, we can't do a conversation about gore without bringing in the Italians, or as Joe Bob says, Italians.
right.
And I really thought about that. I'm like, okay, do I go with Argento? Because you could say Suspiria, obviously, Creepers, things of that nature. And I was like, no, I'm gonna go with the more popcorny ones, and not in a bad way. and I'm just gonna say them both: Demons 1 and 2. I
There you
remember
go.
seeing the original Demons, and actually to this day, every time I see the nails break,
Yeah.
it just gets me. The fingernails, I'm just like, oh, and just every. I know it's silly. I know it's impossible for a demon to come out of the back of a human being who's actually arched up like that, but it looks so good. It's so great to watch it come out like that. I love it. Demons 2, just as gory. A lot of great moments there. There we get demon baby creature that's flying around and killing people.
Yeah.
It's everything about these movies are exciting to me. To me, these are like the Nightmare on Elm Street films, of Italy. They're definitely meant to be sort of mainstream, probably, but they're just exciting and they're kinetic. The fucking soundtracks are amazing. The combination that Argento is so good at supervising of heavy metal along with Goblin and composers of that ilk.
Yep.
And I just love these two movies. And even to know people are like, oh well, there's a Demons 3. I'm like, no, it's not. There's a Demon. No, it's not. It's not. It's not Demons. And there's been talk about remaking them, and hopefully they won't, because I can't see any of the director. And I hate to use the word brave because we're just fucking creators. We don't do anything brave. We just entertain people. I can't see any filmmaker who would be brave enough to say, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do this. I'm just gonna make this balls out gory movie, and I'm sure I'll keep my reputation enough to go make other movies."
Yeah.
So, yeah. So if you guys haven't seen them, definitely Demons 1 and 2.
Yeah. I love them. And I saw um, I saw Suspiria in a in fact, I probably mentioned this to you, in a theater that ended up reminding me of the or when I saw Demons, I went, oh, that's like the Capitol Theater in Milford, Connecticut.
Hmm.
It's at the end of a street, and it just seems to be cut off from everything else. And it just reminded me of that. But yeah, I mean, Demons is 1 and 2 are just good, fun, gross movies. Um, and
With a theme song you will not get out of your head
well,
for
that's
like
for sure.
hours afterwards.
Yeah. But it's interesting because this is leading me into my last choice, um, because you mentioned the fingernails.
Mhm.
Okay. And why is that so bothersome? Well, it's so bothersome because we've all broken a fingernail.
Mm.
We Most of us haven't gotten our heads cut off, but we certainly have broken a fingernail, and we know how painful that is. So to see it amped up. So my last pick is um, is Evil Dead, and not because of any of the elaborate special effects that are in there. It's because of the pencil.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Because when we were kids, those of us who had lead pencils, um, uh, we I've still there's still a thing here where I jammed. I'm not saying I did that, but
Right.
I had the tip of a pencil jammed into my hand. It's The mark is still there, and when when I see somebody get stabbed with a pencil, especially where they stabbed it, in the same leg that I lost a third of my ankle in a car accident, it
Oh,
really hits home. So so I constantly get a kick out of the fact that there are people like me who sat stoically through the entire Evil Dead movie, absolutely loved it, but that was the one that made us go, oh, gee, oh. But it's true. I mean, there's a shot. Did you ever see talk about a film that hardly anyone ever saw? Did you ever see the Boys and Company C?
yes.
Okay, when they're crossing the log in basic training, and the guy slips and one leg goes on each side of the log, and he
Hmm.
comes down on the log. um, and crushes his manhood. There wasn't a guy in the theater that you would have thought we were giving birth. I mean, it was that kind of, oh, you know. So those are the things that we can relate to, and give us something we can relate to, like the shower scene in Psycho. We all shower, or most of us do. Um, you're going to hit a home run, and the pencil in the ankle in Evil Dead was about as much of it. And by the way, I'm not spoiling it for anybody because you're still not going to see it coming. It still happens in a split second. So,
I actually forget about it most of the time. I'm
there
caught
you
up in the
go.
movie, and I'm just like, oh shit, that's right.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh my god, that I can figure out." I'm never going to know how Bruce felt, cutting his hand off, but I can damn well tell you I know what it's like to be stabbed by a pencil.
That's a very interesting point, and maybe that's the key to having gore that will get a visceral reaction as opposed to a gross out.
Absolutely.
Because I don't know about you, every single movie where someone's putting their hand into a garbage disposal, I still get antsy
Right.
because I know what a garbage disposal can do to the human hand. So I'm just like, yeah, don't do that, don't do that.
No, and I've
So I think
replaced
you're
them.
right.
Yeah, I've replaced garbage disposals, and the first time you turn that sucker on, it's like a Boeing engine going
Yeah.
off, and it's like you're all of a sudden, I'm transported back to the scene. Anyway, I can't even go there. But yeah, that's the thing. That's the way you strike gold, is that you come up with a shower scene, you come up with a pencil, you come up with this, that, and the other thing. Because again, man, so many of us know what that's like. Maybe not the degree, but we sure know what it's like.
Yep.
So
So
anyway,
our fellow creatives out there, if you're stumbled into the darkness of I don't know how to scare people, maybe just think about that. What type of things have you encountered that have terrified you or still make you cringe? I think one that didn't make it on my list was Green Room, which again, debatably a horror film. I still call it a horror film.
yeah, I'd go
Uh,
with that.
the one scene that always sticks out is when the character has his arm out the door to give the gun back, and you can hear what they do to him. And when he pulls his arm back in, you can just see bits of it hanging. There's so many slashes,
Right.
and his arm is, filleted. It's horrible. And I remember seeing that the first time. I couldn't sit still in my chair in the theater. I was just constantly moving. And then I went back with our oldest, Derek, and I wanted to see if he reacted the same way. And sure enough, he did. Same thing. Because everyone's gotten a cut before, by something ridiculous. Imagine if someone was just hacking at you, how disturbing that would be, you know?
Yep.
So,
Well, if
but,
I can bring up a point,
mhm,
because you were just mentioned, aspiring filmmakers. The other one is the other thing that they should watch out for, is making a movie that everybody will end up saying is gross as hell, and there's not a drop of blood in it. I know you and I have both heard about Texas Chainsaw Massacre
mhm.
and Halloween. Oh my god! Oh, the blood in Halloween is just, yeah, except it's
I
not.
can't take it. Oh,
Right, except it's not. And
when
it
that girl gets hung on that hook in Chainsaw Massacre, you're depraved. How could you watch that?
yeah, you can
Mm,
see the point come right out the front. Yeah, you can't. It's just one of those things where, um, if you're artistic enough, if your shots are good enough, if your movie is dark enough, people will leave there with shit that you never put in, and most of the time it's going to be great. So
yeah.
I actually was in 78, was driving to computer school one night, which it was night school. And one of the DJs said, "Oh man, if you want to see a bloody movie, take your dates to see Halloween." And I did one of these, tear off the highway kind of thing to try and find a payphone because I'm calling the station basically saying, "You idiot. There's no blood in Halloween. What are you talking about?" So anyway,
See, and that's true nerdum right there. When you're so angry at what someone said, and this is back in the day. Okay, no cell phone to be found.
yeah,
The fact that you're like, you don't know what you're talking about, and I'm going to let you know.
yep. Oh yeah, I swore them up and down. I couldn't wait to get my mitts on them. So yeah, it's if you do a good enough job, man, it will carry itself.
Yeah, the audience will do the work for you in many respects if you present the right tension, the right horrific sequence. You don't even have to go that far.
Yep.
So, but
Okay,
one last thing I'll
hit
mention
me.
on our episode here, and this is going back to the well, and I'm just doing all four of them because they're all the same type of movie, anyways. The Toxic Avenger, again, another wonderful movie to have as you're into horror movies as a young teen and going through puberty and have all these feelings inside. And it's a superhero movie to boot. So it had everything I wanted in a movie at that point in time.
Right. Yeah,
And
that's a
they're
good.
so insane. They're so over the top, and by part two, they start introducing like sub villains and everything, like a bad comic book. And it's just fun and it's silly, and you can't take it seriously or anything. So any of them, and you don't have to watch all of them in order. If you're like just watching TV and are perusing cable and part three happens to be on, just watch it. They'll give you the idea of what these movies are about. And just I really love these flicks. And what's interesting is Macon Blair, who's an actor who was in Green Room, actually. He was also in a wonderful movie called Blue Ruin, a
Hmm.
revenge flick that's very underrated. He has directed a remake of this, and
Really?
apparently the distributor or the studio cannot get a distributor for it because no one knows how to handle it because it's actually extremely over the top gory,
Huh.
just like the original movies. And as I understand it, Peter Dinklage is playing Toxic Avenger. I don't know how that works. I don't know if he starts out as Melvin and then another actor is playing Toxie. But one of the scenes described by a special effects person is that Toxie rams his hand up through a character's ass, grabs his heart, and then pulls it back out.
There we
I'm
go.
like, I want to see that movie so badly. But I keep thinking it's just very triggered late end millennials, maybe, or Gen Zers who are being shown this film and like, we can't release this. They don't understand the tongue in cheek aspect, maybe.
Right.
But apparently it was stated as unreleasable. And I'm like, are you telling? There's no film that I can think of over the last decade that you could consider unreleasable. How can a remake to Toxic Avenger be unreleasable?
Yeah.
So I hope they work those problems out. Just put it out on VOD for 19.99. I'm pretty sure they're going to make their money back at that point. So,
That'd be a
but
lot of fun.
but yeah, that's my final choice of gory, fun kind of stuff. Toxic Avenger.
I
Excellent.
I think that's great. So I guess if we did our job right, people are throwing up in buckets right now.
Just about.
Probably because they probably open another window, put some
Yeah,
clips on, and they're like, "Holy shit, these deviants! Why would they watch this?"
Right.
exactly. Well, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. I knew I would because it has to do with gross.
Right.
So
It's the gory, gory, gory.
yeah, absolutely.
Always a pleasure, Rich. Thanks for joining us.
I had a ball. Thank you so much, guys. I can't wait till next time.
And Ricky, you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, it was fun as usual. And the one thing we didn't talk about though was the French Grand Guignol.
Thank you so much for joining us, guys. We appreciate you. Bye.